The philosophy of Immanuel Kant is notorious for being difficult to understand, but we're going to show it's really not that hard at all and break down some of his major ideas into easy to understand concepts, as well as show where his philosophy went wrong and how to complete his system. Let's leave the human domain of the senses behind and venture beyond into the noumenal domain of the mind. Before Kant, many philosophical systems said that our minds conform to reality. They thought that when we receive data from the outside world through our senses, our mind uses this data to give us an experience of the objective world more or less as it is in itself. For example, if we're experiencing the visual image of a tree, our mind is conforming to the sense data provided by the physical world, and what's really out there apart from our senses is more or less similar to what we're experiencing. In other words, we're experiencing a tree because there really is something tree-like out there on its own apart from our interpretations. Things feel hot because they really are hot. Things have height, length, and breadth because they really are extended, even apart from our experience of them through our senses. Now, Kant turned things around completely. He reversed this model, and according to him, what's really out there may be nothing like what we're experiencing. We may see a tree, but what's actually out there, apart from our experience of it, may be nothing tree-like at all. Think of Neo in the Matrix. He might see a visual representation of a spoon, but really, there is no spoon. Kant proposed that instead of our minds conforming to reality, that reality conforms to our minds. This has been called the Copernican turn. The Copernican model of the solar system replaced the Earth at the center of the solar system with the sun. In an analogous way, Kant replaced the mind rather than an external reality at the center of his system. To get a better grasp on what this all means, imagine that your mind is a bowl that's in the shape of a star, and that water is reality in itself. When the water encounters the bowl, it conforms to the shape of the bowl and becomes star-shaped, even though the water isn't naturally star-shaped on its own. The water conforms to the bowl in a similar way to how Kant proposes that reality in itself conforms to your mind. Kant splits all reality into two domains, the phenomenal and the noumenal. The phenomenal domain is reality as we experience it. This is the everyday world that you're familiar with and includes everything we can observe, including space, time, and the laws of physics. The noumenal domain is reality as it is in itself, apart from our empirical experience of it. According to Kant, the noumenal domain is completely unknowable without the use of faith. To understand why Kant thinks it's unknowable, imagine that star-shaped bowl again. If your mind is the bowl, then every time you encounter the water, which is reality in itself, it seems as though it's star-shaped. This is because it conforms to the conditioning that the bowl imposes upon it. There's no way for you to know what the water is actually like in itself, because every time you encounter it, it will become star-shaped. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine that you were born with green-tinted glasses on and that you could never take them off. Reality would seem like it was green to you, when in reality it isn't at all. The green color isn't coming from reality in itself, but from the glasses you're wearing. But to you, it seems like reality really is green. Since you can never take your glasses off, you can never know what reality is like in itself. According to Kant, this is what the mind does, except it doesn't just impose a green tint, it imposes absolutely everything that you can experience, including space and time. Kant calls space and time necessary preconditions of experience, which means that space and time are necessary to have an experience of any kind whatsoever. So Kant would say that reality in itself, which is the noumenal domain, is conforming to the a priori structures of your mind, which gives rise to the phenomenal world of space and time that you experience every day. Kant is known as a transcendental idealist because, according to him, there is no mind-independent reality. Everything you experience is conditioned by your mind. There really is no spoon. But he's also known as an empirical realist, since according to him, you can never rationally know or experience the noumenal domain. He thinks you might as well treat the phenomenal domain as being real. Now, let's take a look at some of the problems in his philosophical system. Kant says that the noumenal is unknowable, but for something that is supposedly unknowable, he talks about it a lot. If it were truly unknowable, epistemologically, you wouldn't even be aware of its existence. However, since the phenomenal depends on it for its existence, you can infer its existence since the phenomenal exists. The phenomenal must be derived from the noumenal. If it weren't, they would be two separate substances. If they're two separate substances, then they inherit the problem of substance dualism. Two completely different substances can't interact with each other, since they don't have anything in common. If they had something in common, then they wouldn't be truly different substances, and you would be able to reduce one to the other. This is why Descartes' mind-body dualism falls apart, and this is known as the interaction problem. If the phenomenal is derived from the noumenal, then it ultimately means that they're the same substance. In other words, it's not inaccessible to us, and we can in fact deduce its properties through the use of reason. Let's take a look at how our system solves all these problems and allows us to understand the noumenal domain. Hyperianism is founded on a system called ontological mathematics, and this is a mathematical idealism. This means that reality is completely mental, and that mind is defined by mathematical sinusoidal waveforms. Now here's a quick crash course on Hyperianism and ontological mathematics. All of reality is mind, that's it. But mind is defined by mathematical sinusoids. Reality is split into two domains, the source domain and the holos domain. The source is made up of every sinusoid in existence, while the holos is what you get when you combine those sinusoids together. Mathematically speaking, this is Fourier mathematics. And to put it in those terms, the source singularity is the frequency domain, and the holos is the space-time domain. One comes from the other. They're two sides of the same coin. The source is the mental domain, while the holos is the world that you experience around you. But since the holos is derived from the source, that means the everyday world around you is ultimately mental as well. It only seems physical from your perspective, just like Neo in the Matrix. All of reality is mental and has two aspects, the source and the holos. But both the source and the holos have two aspects themselves, form and content. Now this is where Kant comes in. Form is noumena, and content is phenomena. Form is the mathematical structure, and content is how you personally, subjectively experience that mathematical structure. Form is something that can never be experienced, but it can be known through pure reason. To get a better understanding of the difference between form and content, think of color. Colors are nothing but frequencies of light. You will experience an electromagnetic wave at 450 terahertz as red. In this case, 450 terahertz, and the rest of the structure of the wave is its form, while the experience of the color red is the content. You can experience the color red, but you can never experience 450 terahertz. But you can know it. This might seem a bit confusing, but form and content are two different ways of looking at the same information. A blind person could never experience the color red, but they could rationally understand the concept of an electromagnetic wave at 450 terahertz. They can't experience the content through their senses, but they can understand the form. A baby can experience the color red, but it can't know the concept of wave oscillation until it gets older. It can experience the content through its senses, but it can't yet rationally know through reason the form. This is a very important point because people often get form and content mixed up and confused all the time. It's important to distinguish form and content and experience and reason. Pure form is something that we can never experience directly in itself. It's noumena. We can only experience its qualitative aspect, the content. However, we can absolutely know the form through the use of pure reason. All of reality is mathematical, and mathematics is pure reason. Using our mind, which is living mathematics, we have access to the noumenal domain, and we can deduce all the formal properties of existence. There's no need to say that noumena is unknowable. We can have perfect knowledge of it through ontological mathematics. All of formal reality becomes accessible to us through the use of pure reason. The source and the holos both have form and content. The form of the holos is the complex sinusoidal waveforms of which it's comprised, while its content is your sensory experience of the everyday world around you. The form of the source is the simple basis waveforms, and you can experience the source through altered states of consciousness as the interconnected unity of yourself and all reality. Kant was absolutely right to place the mind at the heart of his system, and to propose that there's no mind-independent reality. However, he was completely wrong to say that the noumenal reality is unknowable. Unfortunately, Kant let his religious beliefs cloud his thinking. In a time when rational thought was replacing the concept of God, Kant needed a way to make room for faith. You see, Kant places the idea of God in the noumenal domain, making it off limits for rational discussion, and he relegated it to the realm of faith. He was effectively hiding the concept of God in his black box of the noumenal domain to protect it from rational discourse. Kant said, "I have therefore found it necessary to deny knowledge in order to make room for faith." Hyperianism's foundation of ontological mathematics is completely rational, no faith necessary, and shows that we are in fact God. This reality is our own mental creation, through which we experience each other and ourselves. We've barely scratched the surface, so to learn more about Hyperianism and ontological mathematics, watch the Hyperion movie. We are the future, and soon our system will be taught worldwide. Leave a comment below and tell me your thoughts, and make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy my work, support me on Patreon so I can continue to create. I'd like to give a big shout out to all my true supporters. You guys are amazing. Let's create a new world. My name is Morgue, and I am Hyperion. Ad Astra, to the stars.